Hello and welcome to FringePOD. My name's Connor. I'm a theatre director and maker here in Adelaide and part of the Adelaide Fringe team. I'd like to start by acknowledging that the land we meet on today is the land of the Kaurna people and pay my respects to all elders past, present and emerging. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Joining me today is Michelle Pearson and Rachel Chant, and we're here to talk about honeypot and selling yourself through pictures. Join me in welcoming them today. So, Michelle and Rachel, let's start by telling me a bit about yourself as an artist.
Sure. I've been singing since I've been a kid and I've always loved performing. And I guess I started doing cabaret stuff in my 20s. And then I ended up moving into something called Comfort Food Cabaret, which was my first kind of hit show that became very popular. And I'm also a cook, so I wanted to merge those two things together. And I guess I bill myself as Australia's singing cook. And that's been going for 8 years now. Wow. This is the 8th Fringe it's been in. And it's very successful. And I've got a new show at the moment called Mixtape Australia. And I guess I've been fringing for like 12 or 13 years. I think I've done maybe 13 fringes. So I've been around for a while. Yeah. So that's what I do. I'm a producer, singer and a cook.
Gorgeous. Love that. And Rachel, how about yourself?
I'm a theatre director and the festival director of Bondi Festival. So I came on board Bondi Festival back when it was called Bondi Feast in 2012 as an intern. I just moved to Sydney and I was really excited to get involved in the festival world. And then in 2015, I became the festival director and have sort of been riding the wave of this festival for the last 10 years. And I'm super excited to be here today, so thanks so much.
No, thank you. Thanks for joining me. Let's start with the very first Adelaide Fringe that you participated in. Tell me a bit about how you arrived at the festival.
I started when I was very green, I would say. I was a lot younger and I used to do ensemble stuff, but I'm probably going to loop back to my first Adelaide Fringe with Comfort Food Cabaret. That's probably the most significant for me. We really didn't know how that show would go. And we just thought that, we might do a couple of shows and then I'll move on and get another job. And it just was huge and we added lots of shows and it sold out. I think we did 12 performances and we went through so much halloumi and so much pasta. And everyone was coming and that's how that all started. But, back then I didn't have any processes. I had it probably wasn't even legal to be properly feeding people. I ended up having to go and do like a commercial cookery course to basically meet the requirements of my public liability insurance because I had kind of moved from being a performer to a caterer. So I had to do that. So I was very green. And I remember even pitching this show to producers and festivals in 2017 and I just couldn't even get the words out of my mouth as to what it actually was about because I was still learning that myself. Yeah,
right. So how did you go about defining the pitch?
I got a lot of help from people. So I would speak to lots of people about this, what did you think of it? How would you explain it? And I guess that has evolved over time. Mm-hmm. So I think it probably started out something like, my name's Michelle and I'm a singer and I'm going to cook a 3-course meal and sing for you. Like, sounds like you're coming to my house. And now it's something like Australia's singing cook will not only feed you but serenade you as she cooks up a 3-course meal accompanied by a live band and you'll get to taste each dish. So I guess I've worked with professionals who have been able to and copywriters who have been able to get the message in there properly.
Get to the heart of it.
Yeah, and that's a real skill to learn.
Yeah, gorgeous. And Rachel, how about yourself? When did you first come to Adelaide Fringe and how did that happen?
My first Fringe, I think, was 2017. So I'd been running the festival. We'd taken a break in 2016, so it was my first year back running the festival and was invited to come down as part of honeypot and was thrilled because I'd never been to the Fringe before and I got here and quite frankly my mind was blown. I don't think I'd seen a lot of work, but I don't think I'd ever seen this much work in such a condensed period of time. And I think I did 37 shows in that week and was just hungry, was so hungry for it. I was like, give me more. I think I also had a lot of espresso martinis to get me through those extra nights back then. But it was great. I think it was the first time that it really hit me that my colleagues in this industry are not just the people that I sit around a table with every week, but my colleagues in this industry are, interstate and international and are presenters and artists from all over the world. I think that was the first time that it really sunk in when I was sitting at some of these honeypot events going, okay, I'm a part of, this is a much bigger picture than I had originally thought.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Honeypot, which is Adelaide Fringe's international marketplace, and you yourself are a delegate. Could you talk to us a bit about what that role is in the festival?
As a delegate? Yeah, it's a real privilege, I think, to come along as a delegate because you get to come along and meet so many artists and see so many shows. That real hunger from 2017 hasn't dissipated. It's still, I think I've been here for 2 days and I've done my 9 of currently 36 that I'm booked into for this week, and I'm still hungry for it.
Good.
So it's a really great opportunity to see so many shows, but then to go to a bunch of networking events with artists and other delegates to learn what people are hungry about at the moment, learn what people are making, what people want to be making, what people are programming, and just get a chance to really chat to people. I think pitching is such a big part of what we do, but it's actually incredible just to be able to have conversations and to be able to just meet with artists and talk about what we're doing outside of the sort of constructed pressure that I think pitching can often have with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michelle, you're an artist who's taken part in the Honeypot program. What does that look like for you?
I've been in it, Honeypot, for quite a long time now, and I've had some really good success through it, probably once I learned how to properly pitch myself. But I guess it's like what I find is, and I often say this to other artists that I work with or mentor, is I say, Honeypot is a long game. It's not about walking in there and chatting to Rachel and saying, buy my show, program my show. It's not about that. It's about building that relationship with someone like Rachel. And then, in 4 years' time, Rachel might have moved on to somewhere else, or I'm not saying you should move on, but please stay there. Please stay there. But, Rachel might have moved on to a different festival, or she might tell someone about this show. And I think it's a real long game. And I think I've had really good success through it. I've toured to Edinburgh twice based on connections I've met through Honeypot.
Great.
I've been all over Australia. I've done a lot of regional touring, once again through Honeypot, and Country Arts SA came and picked up my show and said, we want to send this right through SA, and they paid for everything, which is just unheard of. I've had a really good success and I really enjoy it. And this Honeypot this year, I've found it really good because I have learnt a lot about my new show. This is why I've written it. This show is very much for baby boomers and maybe Gen X, but mostly baby boomers. This is really easy to tour. This is going to work really well in regional communities. And so I have just gone through the 60 names at a Hive event and gone, I just want to speak to these 4 people because I know the rest of them won't be interested in my show, but I know those ones will. And they have been, and they've come, and they came out in 40-degree heat on the weekend.
Well done.
And they were there, and now we're talking. So that's really good.
That's great. That's great. You've been able to find your target audience and find exactly what the show needs to be.
Yeah.
We talked a bit about the pitch, and the passion pitch is such a big part of Honeypot. Tell us about what the passion pitch is.
The passion pitch, I guess, is our opportunity to explain our show in a kind of short, iPhone filmed. I did mine in my house. I was a bit late. I was, I had Andy going, come on, get it ready, get it ready, you got to get it ready. And I was just so busy with everything else. And we actually did Fringe World before Adelaide, so we were in Perth. And so it feels like we've been fringing for like 8 weeks because it feels like that season has been going for a long time. But I was a little bit late with it, but I'm so glad I did it because I think it's a really good way to like practice your pitch. So if you can't do that on your iPhone and get that through, you're probably not going to be able to do that at Hive or at a networking event or, you know, right now to Rachel or something. You're not going to be able to do that. So it's a good opportunity to explain what you do, talk about why they should be passionate about it and why they should be interested in it. And yeah, that's what I think of it.
Yeah. How about yourself as a delegate, Rachel? What are you looking for?
The passion pitch is great because I don't get to be here for the whole festival, sadly. So it's really great to be able to catch catch passion pitches from all of those shows that happen before you arrive or happen after you leave. Yeah. And also, even when you're here, you can't fit in everything that you want to go to. Yeah. So it's really great to be able to be like, all right, what have we got? And this is probably part of the challenges as an artist. Part of the challenge as an artist trying to do it is that they're so brief, right? They're so short. But that's what makes them also so great because I can be like, all right, I know I can fit this many into my day and I can hear all these passion pitches without having to, you know, dedicate half an hour to each one. It means that I can really dedicate some time to it, which is really great.
Yeah, beautiful. What advice would you give to other artists creating their passion pitches?
In 2020, I got really obsessed with Survivor. And so I've done a really big deep dive into Survivor.
Okay.
And so you'll just have to excuse my big nerd out
go
around
for
it. But Jeff Probst, who's the host of Survivor, talks a lot about the Survivor audition tapes that you send in. And it's so simple and so cliched, but I think the same thing that's true for the Survivor audition tapes is true for the passion pitches, which is that it feels so cheesy even just saying it, but that you just have to be the most authentic version of yourself. There's no point doing a pitch for the show that you think that somebody else wants because that's not the show that you're going to be able to deliver. You just have to do your pitch for your show. And like we were just saying, it's the long game, you know. Maybe the pitch isn't right for this year's festival. Maybe the pitch isn't right for next year's festival. But then the year later, I'll be like, oh, that show, I remember that show. That was great. That will fit in perfectly for this year. And so I think trying to fit your show into something that it's not is always going to be really hard for all parties. Absolutely. And so... in the words of Jeff Probst, be your true, authentic self.
Great. I hope Adelaide Fringe is a little less competitive than Survivor, but I think you're right.
Well.
Like, it's important to be your most authentic self, and the audience will find you as opposed to chasing after them.
Totally.
Yeah. How about yourself,
Michelle?
I
think for artists, you know, preparing a passion pitch, passion pitch has only been around for a few years. I guess I don't think it was around like 10 years ago, but you know, when it first started, you know, I've been running a venue this year, and I'll just explain, but I've had a lot of artists who are very new to the Fringe and very new to presenting their work. And they have been asking me a lot, like, what do I include? And I've always said it's a bit of an elevator statement. So you want to be able to get out those key points. You want to be able to, you know, say, you know, the what, where, when, who, you know, very, very quickly. But also show a bit of yourself, and that probably matches up with what you're saying, be authentic. So I did mine, like I did two, because I had Mixtape Australia. I did that in front of like my bookcase with all these, like my husband's this huge collector of books, and like I thought I'm going to do it in front of that because it looks like historic kind of thing. And so I did it there, and I just went into it. And then with Comfort Food Cabaret, I did it in my kitchen because I was like, well, I'm going to do it in my kitchen, but let's be authentic about this. And I think it's about getting the elevator statement down. And once again, if you can't do that on film, you're probably not going to do very well at pitching in person to people.
Yeah. Do you think it's important to do your research with the delegates before you meet them?
Oh, 1,000,000%.
Yeah.
Like Michelle was just saying, she knew that her show was right for these 4 venues, and those are the people to talk to. I think some of the most successful pitches I've had have been from artists who've come up to me. They've known about the festival. They've known why their show works in the festival. It was a new show, so they didn't have much in the way of documentation. but they were able to say to me, you programmed X. My show's kind of like X in these ways, and it speaks to the same audience. So I was able to go, oh, great. I know who your show speaks to. I know what vibe you're going for. And I know that you know the festival, so it doesn't feel like you're just trying to, square peg, round hole this. So that's what I find, that's what I found most impressive in that situation.
Yeah.
How do you go about your research, Michelle?
Well, I've probably started doing research throughout the year now. So I think probably five or 6 years ago, I started really treating this like a business.
Yeah.
Like I really got to start. I'm not just a performer. Like I am creating a business out of this. So once again, it goes back to that long game thing. I've been doing I've applied for Showcase Victoria before, and I do the info sessions. I attend those, or APAM, APAC's showcases. I listen to the info sessions and I hear from presenters directly what they are looking for. And there's been a really big shift, I think, in programming from what I can see, and I don't know if you'd agree, but a lot of the presenters have become very risk averse after COVID. There's not enough money. People aren't going out as much. And especially in that older demographic, they want nostalgia. And so I was like, well, I'm going to write a show with nostalgia. And I literally did that. I thought, I'm thinking of doing this, and I'm relaunching an older show that I did a few years ago called Just Desserts into more of a circusy thing. But then I was like, well, that's probably not going to get programmed at the moment because, it's expensive and, it's not going to appeal to that age group. But I've always wanted to write a show about Australian music, and that's going to tick all of the boxes that APAM have talked about, APACs have talked about, Showcase Victoria. So I guess that's where my research kind of came from. And then I guess I just hear names, so I look around with other artists that I admire or work with, and they'll be going to the Castlemaine Fringe, or they'll be performing in Bendigo. So I'll say, who's your contact? And then they're on my radar. So a bit of a stalker, I guess you could say. I just kind of
a healthy amount.
A healthy non-dangerous stalker. But I just I guess I bank that information, and then that person will pop up at Honeypot this year, and I'll go, I actually want to connect with them. So that research for me starts probably years in the making, because I guess there's all these names and people, and then people are moving from festivals. I had a contact at Darwin Festival, and he's moved and he's over here now, and so I like to keep those fires going.
And we mentioned the Honeypot Hives, which are weekly kind of speed dating events where artists and delegates get to come together and meet and pitch their work in person. How is that different to the passion pitch? How do you go about navigating that?
I think it's really good to be able to do that in person because, you can basically bounce off each other. So you can ask the venue questions about, what they're looking for, what they're programming, but also have an opportunity to, really present your work and pitch your work in person. And it's really good to do, and to practice and just to kind of build your connections.
Yeah, gorgeous.
Yeah, it's great because you're able to treat it as more of a conversation, and I think that's where a lot of these things start. Like you said, it's the start of those 4-year relationships or those long-term relationships. You get more of a chance to have a bit of a back and forth as well, obviously, because the passion pitches are just you. The most successful stories for me out of those situations are exactly what you were talking about. We had a chat at the 2020 Honeypot, and then 2021 we touched base again. 2022 I saw their show finally because I was actually able to make it work, and then in 2023 didn't quite fit in that year's program, but potentially 2024's program is the way it works. So I think that long game is such an important thing to keep in mind, and something that I've never really quite put in words.
Yeah. I think for me, as an artist pitching, I've had a lot more success this year because I'm really confident with my pitch and I'm really confident with my work. I'm like, this is a really good show. It's just literally been in Perth for a week and won the major music award. Obviously people really like it. So I'm going in there going, I've wanted to meet you. I know already about their venue. So that's one thing I would always say to artists, don't just line up because everyone else is lining up.
Yeah.
Actually know who they are. Or even just I met, I think is it Darren Lee Cole from Soho Playhouse. Yeah. I actually did this pitch years ago. Actually, I'll tell you about that in a different question. But I did this like lunchtime pitch. I made my own lunch for Comfort Food Cabaret because I knew that none of these presenters would be able to see my show because out of the time, and it's a longer show. I thought they're never going to see it. So I just did like an express lunch pitch. And I reckon that Andy like drove them from like Norwood, my friend's place, back to the Hive because they all needed to get back. It was years ago. But Darren came along. He loved it. And I haven't seen him in a really long time. And I just went up to him the other day and I said, "Hi, Darren, I don't know if you remember me." He goes, "You're the singing cook." And I said, "I am." And he goes, "Oh, what are you doing?" And we had a chat. And I said, "I've probably got nothing that, you'd program at the moment. But I just wanted to say thanks for coming back to Honey Pot. And it's really good to see you. And hopefully one day I will have something." And that's a relationship that I've made like 6 years ago. Or whenever he was here. So I always say to people, know the venue. Don't just rock up and be like, "What do you do? Oh, do you like," there might be a venue that's only looking for children's theatre and you're coming in with like Sexy Circus. That's probably not going to match up. So I think the Hive networking is about being confident and knowing your stuff.
Yeah, great. Something that we've been talking to artists a lot in these kind of podcast sessions are artist well-being and we've talked about it being a long game. How do you avoid burnout and keep the fires burning?
Oh, that's a hard one because I feel quite burnt out at the moment. I don't know if I'm doing it well. I think it's about being healthy. So, I used to honestly, when I was in my kind of early 20s, I used to think of Fringe as a big party. Yeah. You'd always go to the artist bar afterwards and you'd feel a bit unsteady the next morning. I don't do that anymore. Like I have to keep my voice in good check and now that I've got a son as well, like I've got a family to look after. So it's a real juggle. And I think it's about, eating healthy food, keeping hydrated, getting enough sleep and, trying to also I think, trying to put things into perspective because I think at Fringe time there is a real risk of getting into that mindset of like, well, why me? Why isn't it working for me? Why are they getting that publicity? Why are they getting that opportunity and I'm not getting? Why didn't I win an award? Like you can get into that mindset a little bit because you're working so hard and you think your work is great, but maybe it's just not reaching that point. And I think it's just really good to just look after yourself, almost like, if you were running a marathon or you would be training and you would be really looking after yourself and treating your body like a temple. Yeah.
How about you, Rachel? You're seeing so many shows in such a short period of time. Is the key the espresso martini?
I mean, look, I think it is different when you're on this side of it. But I think the thing that I always try to plot out at the end of my festival is I'm like, I need to put in mental health leave. Like I need to do that. I know I'm not going to be firing on all cylinders at the end of a festival because I'm going to be exhausted and, working those huge hours. So it's like, all right, you need to give yourself time to actually like feel all those feelings and then to reset before you can actually come back and work properly. I remember the first few years I didn't do anything like that and tried just coming back into work the next day and getting, starting evaluation, starting thinking about the next year's festival and being like, why aren't I able to do this? Why does it feel so hard? And it's because I just didn't give myself the time. And I think it's easy for me to say that as well. I think it's harder when you're an artist and when you're freelancing to be like, I'm going to give myself this time because you feel like you need to keep on keeping on. You need to keep the hustle alive. Yeah. But I think you've got to give yourself the energy to have that hustle and that takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. A huge part of pitching as well can often be rejection. They don't always lead to success. How do you manage rejection?
I think rejection and like these festivals, it's wild. I always say it's wild. Like one moment you've got someone offering you a prize and, lots of money to go to Edinburgh. And then the next moment, someone who you really thought was going to like your shows, you're like, oh, it's just not up our alley. Sorry. Like I find that stuff probably one of the hardest things because there's so many highs and there's so many lows in these festivals. I think you just have to, as an artist, I think with rejection, it's just part and parcel with the job. So, you are going to have that. And it's, if you think about if you're a car salesman, you're not going to sell a car to every single person that comes in. And I try to just put things into perspective. Well, not everyone's going to like your show, or, you know, not everyone's going to have the capacity to program it. So I think it can be really difficult for some artists because, you know, they are banking everything on one presenter or one festival. So I think it's really good to have a few options so that you don't feel such an overwhelm of rejection.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was, you know, because I straddle both worlds as an artist and a presenter, it was really great for me personally to start working in the presenting space, because then I was like, oh, it's not personal. You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
They didn't come and see my show and be like, I hate her. Or, you know, and maybe they did, but not everyone did that, you know.
Yeah.
So it was really great for me to be like, okay, cool, I love this show. I absolutely love it, but I'm not able to make it work this year, and that sucks. So it was really, good for me to have that perspective.
The Honey Pot program can lead to a lot of success, though. What are some of the highlights of your time in Honey Pot?
I think it's kind of what we were talking about a second ago, how a conversation that I had in 2017 has, you know, resulted in an artist coming to the festival in 2019 with the small show, and now leading to a bigger show in conversations for 2024 and 2025. So I think it really is that potential of the long game that's so exciting to me.
I've been really lucky. I've met people who have taken Comfort Food Cabaret to Edinburgh and Just Desserts when we were doing that. And that's been good and bad. Like I met some producers here the first year we went to Edinburgh, and they just offered the world, and they were terrible. They were so bad as we went to Edinburgh. They were so bad. I ended up telling Fringe, don't invite them back because they're awful. It wasn't just me. There was a whole lot of Adelaide acts that went over, and it was bad. But we had a really good time in Edinburgh. It was really good. And I think I always say this to artists as well, that I think once you've performed in Edinburgh, you are a lot like stronger and a lot more agile. And, you know, I remember coming back from that experience and my sound tech at the time saying, you're so laid back. And I was like, oh, I've been to Edinburgh.
I can handle anything.
I can handle anything now. But I think, I've had some really, really good highlights. I think actually touring through regional South Australia is a highlight. We had Country Arts SA come to Comfort Food Cabaret in 2021. They loved it, and they said we'd really like to talk about how we could send this around regional SA. And I was really nervous about it because I hate spiders, and I was really worried they were going to put me in hotels with spiders. I just had this thing that we were going to stay in these really awful motels, and that was honestly what I was focusing on. And they were like, it's fine, don't worry. And I just had this idea that regional South Australia would be really daggy, but it wasn't. It was so beautiful, and we have met those incredible people, and we've just taken our new show back there completely unfunded, like not through Country Arts SA, because we've got the relationships with these places now. Yeah, and so they are like, bring us shows and we will get the audience, and it's been really good. So that's a real highlight for me.
Yeah, that's great. Well, just jumping back onto pitches, do you find it helpful to get feedback from delegates and from other artists when you're pitching?
Yeah, I do. I think it's really good. I had actually one woman the other day at Hive say, do you know that your contact details aren't on this? And I said, oh, okay. And I thought, oh my goodness, like that's really bad. How did I forget that? But, you know, like that's good feedback. She's noticed it straight away. How do I contact you? They're not on here. I thought, oh, wow. So I went away and I changed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, great. Do you have any advice for artists pitching, Rachel?
The main one that I came across recently was, I was like, this show sounds great, but I have no idea what the audience experience is. I think the marketing copy was snappy, but I was like, when I come to see this show, what am I doing? Like what happens throughout it? And it actually ended up being this really exciting journey that you went through, but there was no sense of that in the pitch. The pitch was sort of thematic rather than your experience. And I think as a presenter, you're thinking about what your audiences are going to be experiencing all the time. And so knowing, particularly if you've got something, if your audience experience is unique, you know, like if they get to eat a meal or like watch somebody prepare a meal throughout that, like that's such a big part of it. That's the main thing that I've come across in a few recently.
And if artists are struggling to refine what their show is, how can they refine it down to the heart of it?
I think that it's about getting feedback from professionals, and so I was greatly helped by copywriters, marketing people, even just like asking the Fringe stuff. So like asking Andy and asking, you know, Joe and Heather and people like that, you know, what do you think? Where do you think this should fit? I think that's really important. And also just watching people who have been successful before you, like how do they do it? That I learn a lot off of watching people and stalking them on Instagram. But I learn
stalking going on here.
I learn a lot by just watching them and seeing how they do it. And then you're like, well, I'm going to apply that to my pitch. And yeah, so I think that's a really good thing to learn from your peers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like not all artists know that Adelaide Fringe runs all year round, and we're absolutely here to help and answer any questions that artists may need. Yeah, great. Is it important to follow up after a pitch?
I'll let you go for that one.
I think so. I think there's a fine line to toe between following up and hassling. And I say this as somebody that has definitely been a hassler in the past. But particularly after something like Honeypot, where you're meeting so many different artists, the ones that follow up are the ones that are going to sort of stick in your mind, because you'll be like, oh, great, a second point of contact. And B, you know they're actually interested. You know you weren't just one of many dates on that speed dating event. Yeah. So I think a follow-up is super important. Also because we're, you know, generally during this season, everyone's so busy. So you might forget a conversation, and it's not because the conversation wasn't really important. It's not because the show wasn't a great fit. It's just because you've had so many conversations that day or that week. So I think a follow-up is, you know, if you're really keen about pursuing that opportunity, I think it's integral.
Yeah. Michelle?
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. I always follow up. I try to do it fairly quickly. And with a, you know, Hive networking event, it's really important because sometimes you don't want to give them your presenter kit or your touring kit, is, you know, that you're holding, you know, you've probably been given 10 already.
Yeah.
And, you know, you have to take that back and cart that around to shows with you. I just say, I'm going to send you a touring kit if they give me their card or I find their email on the AVR and the My Honeypot section. I just think the follow-up just makes you look keen, organised, driven. And I think it's good to actually say, you know, hey, Rachel, it was lovely to meet you at Honeypot today. As discussed, I've attached my touring kit for you. And, you know, my show, just a reminder, my show is on this weekend at this time, and this time. And if you can make it, that would be great. I can arrange tickets or you can do that yourself. But, yeah, would love to see you and hopefully see you soon. But I think once you've done that, I feel, and I don't know if you'd agree with this, but I feel like if you put that out there, you're probably not going to go, hey, did you get my touring pack? Like, you haven't replied to my email. Because the other thing you need to consider is that some of these presenters and producers, like, they're flying in from London, they're flying all over, and then they might be heading to the Melbourne Comedy Festival and they're already onto producing shows there. So, you know, everyone's busy. And so, yeah, there is a real fine line between following up and hassling, I think.
How do you navigate that fine line? How do you...
I just think one follow-up is fine. And then, you know, like, here's my touring kit. And then if you don't hear from them, well, I think you probably, like, I personally wouldn't be going in again. What do you think with that?
I think so. I think the only time I would potentially, the only slight shift I would do to that is I think the follow-up, if your show is still on, following up during the Fringe, 100%. Yeah. If your show's over, wait a couple of weeks because there's going to be a lot of follow-ups during that time during the festival. Yeah. And that might save you having to do the second one later where you're like... hey,
yeah,
were you too busy? Maybe you were too busy. So I think I agree 100%.
Yeah. I've got a good example of this.
Yeah, go for it.
Like a couple of years ago, I do these pitch lunches, like I mentioned, where I like have an express pitch lunch where I pitch my work, and I cater it, and we usually get maybe 10 or 12 delegates there. I didn't do one this year because I've just been too busy, but I think it's Nick Clark from Nicholas Clark Management come along to one, and he really liked the show, but he was like, I don't think I could ever put this on one of my touring circuits because I just don't think my venues would have the capacity to do this, and it's probably expensive, and you know. But anyway, I thought, okay, that's fine. And then I was in Melbourne and I thought, maybe 6 months later, and I thought I'd give him a call to see if he wanted to catch up and just talk about something. And he was in New Zealand at the time, but I'd already kind of planted that seed. So I'm here in Melbourne, I want to catch up kind of thing. And then I haven't heard anything. And then he's here at Hive and I've written this new show, which is totally programmable on his. And I just lined up. He knew exactly who I was. And I said, hi, Nick, how you going? Hey, how are you? I haven't seen you in ages. I said, I've written this show literally for you and you're touring and I really want you to come and see it. And he said, okay, absolutely. Can you tell me about it? So I pitched it. And I really got in there very quickly that it's for baby boomers and it's a real nostalgic show. I had all these keywords in there. And he said, great, excellent. I'm going to send Darcy, my colleague, along. And then he bought a ticket on Sunday as well. So then today I followed him up and I said, thank you so much for coming. And, I'll be in touch after Fringe and hopefully we can have a chat. And I've just left it like that. So I'm not hassling him. Maybe going to Melbourne was a bit... no, I didn't go to Melbourne with him. Maybe that was weird. But I really that's a real long game thing. Yeah. So I met him here and pitched to him there. And then I pitched to him there. And then I tried to track him down in Melbourne. And then and now I'm I've got a show for you and I think you should come. And they came. And that's a really good example of just that constant follow-up and just being in there, just being on their radar.
Yeah. How do you go about creating a show with an audience in mind without kind of forcing an idea or making it purely for them? How do you keep yourself in the art?
I think this new show of mine, Mixtape Australia, is very much something, that I've always wanted to do. But I think it was choosing between, something else or that. And I thought, well, this is going to have more success at the moment based on how the market is. But I think... I think you have to be careful because you do want to be authentic to your art. You don't want to just be creating work that everyone, you think everyone wants, even if you're not actually enjoying it. I actually really enjoy this show. But if I wasn't, I wouldn't be doing it. Yeah.
Totally. And I think it's the same with programming. I can be I know this show will sell tickets to this audience, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's it's true to the festival experience that I want to create this year. And I think that there's... It's oddly a similar thing of you want to be true to your designs for what that's going to be and true to your creative vision for it. And, sometimes there's a lot of financial pressure to be no, we need to sell tickets. But it's but you've got to walk that line, I think. So it's definitely possible to do both though. You just have to be okay, cool. If I want to speak to this audience, what's the story that I want to tell that speaks to that audience? And I think... that's the answer. Yeah.
And when you're programming a festival, how do you stay on top of trends and what your audience wants and stay relevant?
I see a lot. Which I think is really important. I talk to a lot of artists as well, just having a lot of conversations about what people want to see. And we also do a lot of surveys. We talk to our audience a lot to be what did you love? What do you want to see more of? And I think those surveys can be super informative as well. And just, when festivals are on, I'm constantly, it sounds creepy, hanging out in the bathroom, listening to the conversations that people are having to be
I'm the stalker.
Just to be what is it that's sitting with people? Yeah. What do people want to, what's speaking to them about this show? What are they comparing it to as well? I think, just a lot of talking and listening.
And what are you finding audiences are hungry for at the moment?
The last couple of years have been an interesting one. We've found a lot of people have been wanting joyful experiences. I think the last, period has been a tough one. We're currently in a tough period as well for different reasons. And I think I found people are wanting to come to the theatre to experience joy and to experience nostalgia as well. I think that's been really at the forefront of my programming over the last couple of years. How can I give audiences new and interesting experiences, but joyful ones? That's not to say that we're not doing anything challenging, but I do think that is a driving force at the moment.
Yeah. Would you say the same, Michelle?
Yeah, I think from the research that I've done and all of the info sessions I've attended, producers, presenters I've spoken to, a lot of people are looking for joy and they're looking for uplifting experiences for their audiences and, you know, high energy and things that are actually just going to pull people back into the theatre, pull people out of their homes again. Get people to stop watching maths and get it, you know, like honestly. Survivor, you know, honestly. But, you know, I guess, you know, you look at, I really think it has affected people's, you know, willingness to go out. We've had, you know, a pandemic where, you know, basically Melbourne was locked down for almost a year.
Yeah.
And Sydney, Adelaide, we were very lucky, but, you know, it has changed our behaviours. So, you know, there are people, you know, my mother-in-law, she won't even go out anymore. She's so scared of it, and she's a whole other story. But it's difficult, you know, for some people. They are anxious about that. And even like I've watched, you know, Gluttony deal with this over the last few years of, you know, having different performances for people, you know, who are worried about that. So you're right, we've got 3 outdoor venues and we're going to program these things in there. And we're going to do a couple of performances which are, you know, everyone needs to wear a mask in it, you know, like, so we are just trying to navigate a new world.
Yeah.
And as much as, you know, we think it's all, you know, coming back the same, it actually is still really different. I think it's really different.
Yeah. And you're right. Like people's patterns of going out and resilience for going out, I think has changed a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's think back to your first time at Adelaide Fringe. If there was a bit of advice you could give yourself then, what would you give?
Don't go on a really long bike ride on day one because your legs will not be able to walk around the next few days.
Wow.
Honestly, if I could go back and tell myself one thing,
It would be that?
it would be save your thighs. You're going to be doing a lot of walking.
Yes, yeah. I think the advice would be to pick 1 or 2 goals.
Yeah.
So if you go in wanting everything, I want presenters to see my work, I want to make money, I want to build my audience, I want to raise my profile, you're probably not going to achieve all of them because actually sometimes they
Conflict.
They conflict.
Yeah.
And I think if you just have 1 or 2 goals, you're much more likely to smash that goal. And that's a lesson I wish I had have known, you know, 10 years ago when I started fringing. I think it's really important. Yep.
Do you have goals for this Fringe?
Yeah, so I think this year, and I'll be really upfront about this, but Mixtape Australia, I want to get it on a touring circuit. I want to get it in front of presenters. I know for a fact, and this is no disrespect to Honeypot delegates, but I know that a lot of the Honeypot delegates don't really venture out of the city. They often just see shows in the East End. I was speaking to a woman the other day from a cruise ship who didn't even realise she's gone now, but she didn't realise that there was like a Fringe out of Gluttony and the Garden. I thought, well, that's an issue, especially as I'm running Bondi Fringe, and there's so many great acts there, but there's no Honeybot delegates coming out because it's not easy to get to. Well, it is, but you know, if you're not from here, it's so easy just to walk down Rundle Street and go to that Fringe. So I was offered a spot for Mixtape Australia and Gluttony. They take a fair chunk of your money. I knew from day one I'm not going to make a cent on this show if I don't reach this goal. But I want presenters to come in. And I've had them. I've had heaps of presenters come in. And so I have smashed that goal. But was I there to make money? No, I wasn't there to make money. And if I had programmed that show at my own venue, Bondi, it would have made huge money because that's a venue where baby boomers and they find it really comfortable. There's lots of downsizes around that venue. They want to go there. It's air conditioned. There's no portaloos. Whereas that audience doesn't necessarily want to come to Gluttony at 4:30.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So even the venue is important to selling the show.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's something I've been looking at a lot this year with Bondi is that, you know, I think I use Bondi for Comfort Food Cabaret because it has a commercial kitchen, and I thought, well, I'm going to open it up to other artists and see if they want to use it too. And that's how this kind of Bondi Fringe was, I guess, born. But I looked at all the shows applying and I thought, I think we need to find shows that are going to appeal to an older audience because that's who's living around Bondi, and lots of retirees, lots of families. Okay, so I'm probably, and you know, we can't achieve a blackout, so it's not good for theatre, but it's really good for cabaret and music. And so that's what I've done. And I think the venue is important. With Gluttony, it is hard. My auntie was really anxious to come in because she didn't know where to park. Where am I going to park? Am I going to be able to find a toilet? Is it really far? And I said, no, the entrance is just here and you just walk in. But if you are, trying to pitch a show to 75-year-olds, that venue is actually, it is really important.
Yeah.
And I think aside from saving your legs, the biggest thing as a delegate is to also connect with the other delegates. There are so many times that I've not seen a show but been chatting to another delegate, talking about the festival, and then they've been like, oh, did you see Comfort Food Cabaret? That would be perfect for this. And I've been like, oh, no, I didn't. And so just tapping into the resources of your colleagues is huge. And then, I've actually learnt so much from attending Adelaide Fringe about how to grow Bondi Festival as well. So there's always so much to learn from your delegates and just from attending the festival as a whole. And so I'm like, lean into that, go and see all the shows and meet the artists, but also make sure you're connecting with your peers.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a delight talking to you both. Enjoy the rest of the festival.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us today. Make sure to follow Adelaide Fringe on all our socials for any more updates.